Well, hey everybody! Time for another San Antonio Tech Dad podcast. Hey, I'm Alan, and I've got Corey and Drew with me. How you guys doing today?
Good, good.
I'm well.
All right. Well, glad to have you all joining us here for another San Antonio Tech Dad. We're going to talk a little bit about technology, a little bit about San Antonio, and a little bit about being dads. I think that's kind of the type of things that we like to talk about and are. So I think we can make that happen. I think one of the things we wanted to talk about mainly today, Corey, you were just having a fun all over the state of Texas this past week.
Yeah, this past week, I had the kids for a week for the summer. We were going to do a summer vacation trip. We decided we would do something fun by going to the four major zoos in San Antonio. This really was spawned by Pokemon Go because there's so many events that Pokemon Go were doing at all the zoos. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. So my
Four major
girlfriend says,
zoos in Texas, right?
in Texas,
Yeah.
locally, in the
Yes.
state of
Yes.
Texas. Yeah, I know. We went to New York. We went to
Yeah.
California.
San
No, we didn't
Diego's
do any of that.
amazing.
Yeah, I've heard it's
San
good.
Diego's glorious. So
But you
we
hit up
we stood
Texas.
we stayed up Texas. We went to Dallas on Monday, Austin on Tuesday, and then I'm sorry, Austin on Wednesday, then San Antonio Wednesday night, and then on Friday headed out to Houston. It was a lot of fun, actually. It probably put about 1,500 miles in the car. I didn't realize, and because it was like a lot of people were at work. The traffic was not bad at all. Not bad. Not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. But it was fun. It was just interesting to take the kids to the four zoos and then see the different dynamics. You know, everybody has giraffe feeding now. That's like the new hotness. So every zoo is like, hey, come feed the giraffes. Here, take this lettuce. Feed the giraffes. There's a giraffe. Feed it lettuce. How much is that? $5. Feed the giraffe. Every zoo has it now. And so that was pretty cool, but like some of them have elephants, some of them don't have elephants, and the animals are definitely diverse. Houston has a red panda, which my daughter says is her favorite animal in the world, so she was excited for that. Um, and we saw some very interesting animals, but yeah, the kids loved it because it was a road trip. It was something very simple. It was a trip to the zoo, which took about 2.5 hours, and then a trip back home. So we didn't actually stay in each city every night. We actually drove up there, drove back that night. Um, we created folders for the car, which were very interesting. Lots of Pinterest ideas that you would not believe work in the car, so you don't have to give your kids like a TV show or an iPad. We gave them markers that they could draw on the windows that were safe. They're
It's like a dry
washable
erase
markers.
marker.
Yeah, like a dry erase marker. So they were like drawing and outlining things they saw outside, or they were drawing landscapes and dioramas. And I drew Doctor Who, and it was very interesting. I drew the TARDIS, and we guessed what that was. And my daughter tried to do a scene and was like trying to look stuff up that she wanted to draw. My son thought it was great from his car seat, just like this. It was awesome. He really enjoyed it. Um, they also had my girlfriend had put together these sticks. She took tongue depressors and put Velcro stickies on each side. One, so they each sticky piece. Because you can buy them at like the store for like 99 cents. So you get
Yeah.
the two halves, the sticky half and the soft half. So she put one on each side of the tongue depressors, and she made a bunch of them, and they became like mobile Lincoln Logs. So my son could put them together and would build these elaborate things like claws and like reach his sister and poke her because he could reach her with this thing. It was
I'm not
like,
touching you.
this is awesome. He's like, I'm not doing this, but these tongue depressors are. So he would build like designs and stars and put them together, and I was like, that's brilliant. And it maybe cost like $3, and he thought it was the greatest thing ever invented. Like, took him to his room when we got home and was like, I'm playing with these. Thank you. It was nice talking to you, parents. I'll talk to you all later. So yeah, so we put this folder together with a bunch of Pinterest ideas just so the kids had something to do during the car rides. And the car rides ranged anywhere from an hour to 3.5 hours. And it kept them occupied the whole time, which is great. Absolutely ideal. We did bring the iPads and the Kindles. I will say that. I'm not I'm not flawless and made them not do any electronics, but I brought those and they had a good time. But they didn't use them nearly as much because of the folders. They had something to interact with. They had something to do, and it didn't require having to stop and buy like a coloring book and
Mhm.
worry about them coloring all of the things. Like there's like, hey, this is safe. You can do all of this. Play with this. Um, Again, the zoos were fantastic. Beautiful weather to do all of this at too. Like I couldn't ask for a better week. Every time we went somewhere, clear skies. Which I say that because for those in San Antonio, we've been having some serious rain for the past, I'll say,
Mhm.
3 days. Like it's been intense. But for the last week, it was beautiful. Clear skies, glorious days, suntan lotion everywhere. It was awesome. Um, yeah, it was a good trip. It was fun. It exhausted them for the week, and I felt like it was a summer vacation thing. Like it was a trip that stayed within the state, but it got them out of their locale, so they got to do something and see something. Now, my daughter's been to the Houston Zoo, but I'd never been to the Dallas Zoo, so I had no clue. We went to the aquarium while we were out there too, and that was a lot of
Mhm.
fun. And then I had never been to the Austin Zoo, and it was just one of those things like we wanted to start marking these off and saying that we had been there, and they all had Pokemon Go events. So everywhere we went was like, hey, play Pokemon while you're here, and my kids loved that too. So we played Pokemon and we looked at animals, and it was fantastic.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun, and it sounds like you figured out a couple of really good activities to do along the way. I love the idea of drawing on the windows. I mean, it's something that they can do, and shouldn't get into too much trouble with that because it's sanctioned, and they can just draw whatever they want and wipe them off at the next stop.
It is, and you could take like Windex wipes or like
Hmm.
Chlorosol wipes and just wipe your window down, and it's done. Like you have no issue, if it gets on like the fabric of the car, wipes off. You have nothing to worry about. So they
Very
think they're
cool.
getting away with like coloring on the walls, and you're like, psh, yeah, okay, good job. That
Yep.
was pretty.
Would it do the Magnadoodle thing, like when you roll the window down, it would like erase it as it went, and you could stop it
Oh,
and go
how
back up
great!
and
Oh,
get half a picture?
Well, it's a lot better than trying to have like an Etch a Sketch where you had to shake the door and be like,
yeah.
but yeah, I like the Magnadoodle idea and
Just
just be like,
zzz. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a
gone clean. That'd be great.
great idea.
Um, my son thought it the greatest idea. So my son got confused while we were on one trip coming back from Dallas. My daughter had drawn this elaborate picture full of color on the window, and she took a wet wipe and she wiped the whole thing down, and she was making the joke, "Hey, look at my hand! It's totally colored right now." And her hand was like this elaborate brownish, reddish color. So I was like, "Okay, that's." I was like, "Yeah, well, you should probably throw that away." My son didn't understand that she had wiped the window down first. So while we weren't looking, he spent the entire time coloring the palm of his hand with the washable markers because he wanted to do what his sister had done. So when he was done, he sat up and was like, "Look, I have a crazy hand too." And I turned around and was like, "No!" So we had wipes and like had to wipe him completely down and had to explain so that he could wipe the window down and have a funny colored hand with the wipe on it. So the rest of the trip, that was his favorite thing. Like once he got past the I colored my hand, we got everything cleaned off. It was like, hey, if I do this, I get a funny colored hand too. And I was like, oh, yes, that works much
Finally
better.
figured
Thank
it
you.
out.
Well, next you're going to be
Yeah,
introducing him to henna, and he'll have a henna tattoo on his hand.
right. Something like the henna crawled all the way up his arm, and be like, Dad, look, it's the witch blade, and I'd be like, why? What is that? So
Nice. Well, I'll definitely be trying the markers thing, and it's a great idea. We've been to the Fort Worth Zoo, which was really nice. I like that one quite a bit, and of course the San Antonio Zoo here. So would like to try the others as well.
Yeah, I think Austin Zoo is the one that I haven't been
there's
to.
you should go to Austin. Austin's really nice. Austin has a
Mhm.
really cool zoo. Wimberley apparently has a really good zoo as well, and that's about halfway between Austin and San Antonio. And they have apparently a fantastic zoo. Like we drove by and people were telling us on Facebook, "Stop and go there," and we were like, "It's not on the list, but we'll go eventually. We still have a month of summer left." So now we have to go to the Wimberley Zoo.
So when
So
you go to the Wimberley Zoo, having not been to the Wimberley Zoo but been to Wimberley, make it a swimming outing. The Blue Hole is in Wimberley, and the water is cold and deep and glorious. It's just this swimming hole that is surrounded by giant cedars And I haven't been out there since all the floods happened a year or two back, so I imagine that it's still that way, but it could have been um, negatively affected. I'm not sure. Um, but it's a great little natural swimming hole if you want to get out for a full day. I know that there's kind of more to do. You could go out, spend a day in the San Marcos Wimberley area and get quite a bit done. Actually, there's a glass blowing shop that's on, I think it's 16. That's Bandera. There's one of the
No.
roads that goes 32 maybe. I'm going to throw out numbers until I'm close. It goes from San Marcos out to towards Wimberley, and there's a glassblowing place that does demonstrations all the time, kind of in the back of their shop, and you can go see the craftsmen at work and see what they're doing, which is a pretty cool distraction to add to that whole trip. So Wimberley is a great place for a day trip if you're not going to take the full week and do a full San Antonio, Texas, Houston, Austin, Dallas grand tour. You can just head up 35 and enjoy a day trip into the Wimberley area. So maybe that's something you hold on to for a couple of weeks.
I think so. That's one of the things like I said, we heard a lot of good feedback now, even from you. So now I'm like, okay, now I have to go. Now I have to see what all this Wimberley's about. Because when you drive by it, it's just like, oh, Wimberley exit. Keep driving, and you just keep passing. But everybody's like, go to Wimberley. There's so much there, and it's not even a thought when you're driving down 35. So now I'm like, okay, now I have to go and see what all this is about.
Worth it. Definitely a cool hill country spot.
Great.
Awesome.
That's one of the things I really like about Texas is that we can go, or San Antonio specifically. I mean, we're 2 hours from the beach. We are, a couple of hours from Houston and from the Space Center. We're a couple of hours from, or yeah, not even an hour or two from Austin and all of the great music and everything that goes on there, the state capital. There's so much to see and do, and the hill country is just absolutely beautiful here. So I mean, there's so much to see and do just within a single day's trip out there and back. I mean, that's great. Great to be able to do that. So definitely a big fan of being able to do all that and get the staycation here within the same state.
Exactly.
Corey, you mentioned Pokemon Go. How fun was that to play that with the kids? Did they enjoy it?
Dude, okay, so San Antonio is now going to start hosting like monthly, like every Friday for like a month they're gonna do this. We ended up going to every other zoo did. It was like a big thing. It was funny
Mm-hmm.
because we'd walk around and like everybody's like, oh, we're hunting Pokemon, or hey, there's so and so over there, and it was that social atmosphere. But you saw kids doing it and
Mm-hmm.
parents doing it, and everybody was doing it. And then they would stop and be like, oh, look, the monkey's jumping. Everybody would stop, put their phone down, watch the monkey jump, and be like, oh, that was really cool, and they go back to hunting Pokemon, and it was fun. We went to San Antonio Zoo, like I said, after Austin, and they held an event starting at after hours. So it started
Oh,
about
nice.
6 o'clock that evening, which was cool, but I was shocked to see how many people showed up. Like the line alone was out the door, all the way around, by the train station, just people standing there waiting to go in to play Pokemon. Mind you, they had to pay to get in. Okay? They had to pay for food when they got in. We walked in, the loudspeakers were blaring Pokemon 8-bit and 16-bit music. Everything, there were signs everywhere, come play Pokemon Go. They were giving like little flyers, hey, come and play. And it was packed. Standing there in awe of all of this, I'm thinking this is all after hours. So everything they're making is just bonus on what they already did for the day. They've got a line out the door, so they've got tons of people ready to play. It was so successful, they posted on their Facebook page the other day, and they're like, hey, we're going to do this every Friday now. And I'm
Great.
like, after hours, that's great. This is one of those companies, San Antonio zoos are going to be able to benefit from this greatly because people are just going to pay to go in there and catch Pokemon and play with Pokestops and see other people doing it, and it's complete advantage in my opinion. And the other zoos are starting to do that as well, and I think they're following suit. They're really embracing it, which is really cool to see.
That's great. Um, yeah, the zoo's a great place to go. I know that it was a really big attraction in Ingress a couple of years ago, and a lot of the Pokemon is based on Ingress. Um, The one tip that I saw recently from somebody up in Kansas City at their zoo was the tip to ride the train. And as you go along, it takes you to a whole bunch of Pokestops, and you can just go and it also counts for the motion, right, for hatching
Yep.
the eggs. So,
Yep. So
uh,
everybody want to go on the train.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's everybody on the train just going along in a circle. The airport is the other one that I've heard. Like you control the airport and go around in the circle like 2 or 3 times in the space of the hour that they give you for free parking. So I've seen people doing all types of things. But yeah, there's definitely a ton of people out and about. Last Friday, after I got done with the improv show, went out with some friends and went to the Hofbrau at the quarry, and the quarry is just crazy with the Pokemon. So everybody was out there catching Pokemon everywhere.
Yeah,
So,
there's apparently a couple areas in the quarry that have like three Pokestops that are
hmm
close enough that you can stand in one area and get all three. So people are over there, they're running back and forth. It's very lots of high foot traffic. So should be interesting. Let's hope this keeps up and benefits businesses and Amy's Ice Cream makes more and more money because everybody's running in there for Pokemon.
Amy's Ice Cream. So we stopped at Amy's Ice Cream after we ate, and we were in there at like 10 minutes until midnight when they closed, and there were 2 or 3 people in line in front of us. And so I mean, just tons of people out everywhere, enjoying it and spending money, and it's been a pretty good so far. I mean, the zoo they're charging admission, but do you get in for free as a season pass holder, or are you
Yeah, if you have a season pass, you get in just like
great,
normal.
great?
So
But I imagine they're selling even more season passes because of that. So it's a
I bought
win-win.
two season passes. I bought two season passes. I bought a season pass for the Houston Zoo, and I bought a season pass for the SA Zoo. One, because it was hot, and I was not standing in line. I was like, me and the kids were tired. It was hot. I was like, you know what? We're just gonna buy the season pass. We're gonna come back. So we just bought the season pass and went through. And SA Zoo, we did the same thing because I know we're gonna go. So I was like, if it's gonna pay for itself, we're just gonna keep going. So
Yeah, great.
Yeah, one of the other benefits is if you have a season pass, there's times in the year when you can get in early and go when they're still feeding, when the animals are active. In the heat of the day, animals aren't going to be out doing a bunch unless you're going like into the aquariums or things like that. The animals are pretty docile, pretty slow, if not asleep or hiding, and you can get the additional advantage of that earlier time slot where they're both more active and there's less people at the zoo, which is a fantastic thing. We've been zoo season pass holders for a long time, and our kids love it. And I think you go twice as a family, and you've already paid for
Hmm.
it, or you've broken even. And that's typically, from my memory, I think the way the Houston Zoo is also once you go twice, you break even. Everything after that's gravy. And if they have a great
that's right.
zoo in a great part of town, that's one of the things I find about the zoos that I've gone to. Usually the zoo's great, but they also seem to be placed with a bunch of other cool things to do. Our zoo is a great example of that. Brackenridge Park is fantastic. The tea gardens are
The tea
great.
gardens, yeah.
There's a couple of good restaurants in the
Rudy's,
area.
or
The
not
Liddy
Rudy's,
Museum.
Augie's, yeah.
Yeah, Augie's is great. Fairview Coffee is right over there. There's a bunch of stuff right in that little pocket that's compelling and fun, and it's not terribly far from the museum. It's got the kiddie park right there. I mean, there's a lot, and so Houston's very similar. I think it's Herman Park
Yeah,
that the zoo is nestled in the middle of, which is a
and
great park.
they have the tea gardens there right there too as well. They have a Japanese tea garden area that you can
Oh,
walk through, which
nice.
is actually very beautiful.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of opportunities to kind of get a better sense of the city, not just the zoo, in those spots. I remember the Dallas Zoo is set up similarly. There's some cool stuff right around that, and so um, usually they're a component in a larger piece of city planning, and so I've really enjoyed being able to take advantage of the way our city is laid out, our zoo, where it's been placed, and the things around it. So if you haven't been to the San Antonio Zoo, I highly recommend it, especially if you got younger kids. Taking the train and doing that kind of stuff is a great way to spend a morning, and once the weather kind of evens out, maybe a whole day.
Well, yeah. Also, with the evenings coming up, like with all the Pokemon Go stuff, go on like on a Thursday or Friday evening when it's nice and cooled off. Animals are starting to get around and start doing their nocturnal thing, and just go. And it's get out of the sunlight and go play in the dark a little bit and go see what they're doing and see what's happening after hours. But yeah, it's fun. It's really cool.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Um, so Drew, you and I were talking earlier today, and with some other coworkers about figuring out music for your kids. You want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. I have a couple of kids, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they end up liking the music they hear the most. And so when you turn on the radio, that's kind of a least common denominator, top 40 general stuff. And I'm not going to make a major statement on the state of music today, but we have a lot of history of a lot of music and a lot of music that I really enjoy. And so in the current day and age, you can make a playlist that goes on forever. And so there's a law of diminishing returns in my thinking about how to introduce them well to music broadly. And so you kind of get that desert island concept of, if you could have one album for the rest of your life, what's the one album? Or if you could make one playlist, if you could Guardians of the Galaxy mixtape to give to your kid to introduce them to the breadth and representative content of musical history, where do you even start with that? And so I've introduced my kids to the Beatles. I've introduced my kids to some of those, least common denominator type bands, the Beach Boys. Those are really typically pretty easy. There's enough catalog there that you can, pick out some songs. My daughter sings Yellow Submarine at the top of her lungs whenever she feels the need. But how do you go beyond that? And so I've got a playlist that I started working on that has already gotten substantially out of hand. And I'm trying to go back and kind of take some of my preferences out of the conversation to make sure that it's a broad enough conversation. I don't listen to EDM, but it's a style. It's something that's there. If they're interested, give them here's one song from this style that is going to be outside of the norm of the things that you listen to on the radio or on television. So introducing them to, here's some bluegrass, here's some folk music, here's rap, here's R&B, here's soul, here's rock, here's blues. If they just listen to what I listen to, they're still going to get a smaller cross section. So I'm trying to find an ideal way of doing that. I've got a playlist that we listened to. We went to and from dinner tonight with some friends, and I cranked it up, and my wife and I sang along to every song, but I don't know how engaged my kids were. And so that's kind of the place that I'm in right now, trying to figure out how to do a responsible job of introducing them to a culture through music.
Interesting. That's so hard, right? Like, what do you choose? What do you want your kids to be exposed to? How do you let them hear this breadth of music? So there's things like I want my kids to be. I was born in a show family, right? My father was a dancer in Jubilee in Las Vegas for 25 some odd years. My mother's a choreographer, so dance has been always a really big thing, and theater has always been a big thing. So I want like Broadway to be a very strong foundation with it with my kids. But I show them like Singing in the Rain, and they're like, meh, My Fair Lady. They're like, no, it's not my thing. Or they fall asleep. Now,
But
I
he
do something like
he runs up a wall and flips over. I mean, how is that not
right,
compelling?
right. That's like there's no show that does that now. There's no Broadway. Well, I take that back. There's a few Broadway musicals that could probably compare. Now it's interesting because I can do things like I can put on the Hamilton soundtrack, and my daughter will sing it verse for verse, and she will just go with it and just be like, "This is great." She goes, "I know these songs," and she loves the upbeat, and she gets it. And I'm like, that's Broadway. I can do like the Wicked soundtrack and listen to like Kristen Chenoweth or Adina Menzel and just like, here, listen to this, and it's not Frozen, but it's pretty much the same people. And she's like, this is great. And she listens to the whole thing, and she can sing all the songs, and she can sit in the car and recite Popular without any issue. And I'm like, okay, good, this is working. But I don't know if I could pick like single songs and just be like, this is what this is most well known for. This is what this is most well known for. Like the Beatles, Yellow Submarine, great song. Help? Why not use Help? You know, like then why not introduce them to the Monkees? And then it goes down this whole like time. I would have the same problem with you. I would have like the playlist from hell. My playlist would be so full of music, it would take them forever to get caught up. I mean, I want them to listen. I listen to a lot of EDM. So there's a lot of stuff that I would be like, hey, this is jungle, this is trance, this is house music. I'd want them to understand the different genres within a genre, and we would go down a rabbit hole that I don't even know if I could control or come back from.
This
So
is my problem.
this is a problem. So what I'm trying to do is like if we hear something with a familiar beat or a sampling that is familiar from a past song, you'll see top 40 songs. Rihanna uses a lot of things that Michael Jackson once used before. So I'll go back and be like, hey, this sample's actually from this song. So I can give it to my daughter or my son, and they go, hey, that's that song. I'm like, no, this is the original song, and then they get involved with that and want to see what that's from. Just kind of segue them to something like that, and try and find the relevance between music now and music then, and kind of give them that appreciation. But it's so hard. But man, if I had to make a mixtape, I kind of would just go with Guardians of the Galaxy and be like, here's Volume 1. There you go. That should cover most of it, right? Does that work? No?
Once you
Dang.
get hooked on a feeling, you pretty much got the idea.
Right? Oh,
This is
man.
music.
What do I do? Do I say, hey, kiddo, this was cool back in the day. This is called Ace of Base. This was a thing. Why? It was kind of like ABBA, but not. So, but we're gonna go with it. And it's just like things like that. Like, where do you pick this music from? My twin brother's a huge metalhead, right? So we used to listen to metal all the time. So. Do I introduce my kids to metal, and then what kind of metal do I listen to? And should I say, hey, this is Metallica? They were metal, not so much anymore, but there's some great metal bands out there right now coming out of Sweden that you should really listen to. This is In Flames, and sorry, we're not going to go with that. But it's just like
Additional problems.
additional problems. Like it just stacks up, and music is such a large genre. It's the same thing with movies. Like where do you start? Like, hey, these are classics. You need to see this. This is music. You need to listen to this. But I feel that as long as you're always making the attempt and trying to show them this stuff and making them exposed to it, they're always going to be aware of it. Or just you doing it, or you listening to it, or your friends listening to it, it starts to stick and ingrain in their head because you know when they're going to get older, they're going to go, oh, I remember that song because so-and-so was playing it at dinner, or we were listening to, it's Sunday morning. I listen to jazz music, Sunday morning jazz. That's my jam. Go get that, a little cup of coffee. I put Sunday morning jazz on. My kids are like, I love this song. It's on every Sunday. Do, 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 do. And I'm like, yes. I don't know the name, but we're going to go with that because you like jazz. We're going to keep going with that, and we're going to local coffee. But it's just exposing them to that because the radio's not going to do that. Spotify's a really good resource for that. It's not the best resource. There are a lot of things lacking there, but to like make playlists and whatnot, it's really handy, to say the least.
I've got a painful playlist, a painfully long and wandering playlist, continuing to be built for some inexplicable reason. That's clearly not the answer, but it's what I've been working on. So one of the things that I've been doing that I think I'm going to continue, so I have a decent sized record collection. It's actually right below the camera, so if you were to look down, you'd see all my records. I'll play a side of a record if it's like Dad's in charge afternoon. I'll play a side of a record turned up a little bit. We'll be in another room, but instead of setting a timer and being like, okay, when the timer goes off, we're going to have to go take a bath, it's like, we're going to listen to the music until the music stops. And so we've done like the front side of Boston's self-titled album, or Black Sabbath Greatest Hits, or, Revolver, or, all of these other albums that I have. And so we'll listen to Brubeck one day, and it'll be more of a jazz feel, and we'll listen to, I don't know, I'm gonna look down Chicago or Ray Charles, um, Jackson 5, all sorts of the things that I happen to have. But at a certain point, I'm gonna run out of records I can do that with. That's gonna expand their horizons, and it's probably gonna help me because there's deep cuts on some of those albums that I don't know. But that's what I've been attempting to start a trend. And I use timers with my kids already. Like, hey, we've got this amount of time. I'm going to set a timer when this song plays, and they hear "While My Guitar Gently Weeps." There's the main lick from that's my ringer or whatever. They'll get little bits and pieces, but it's different than getting a sense of, okay, that's James Taylor. Okay, I kind of got an idea for what singer-songwriter could potentially be. Oh, that's Carlos Montoya. That's what Spanish guitar sounds like. Okay, interesting. Um, that kind of thing. Giving them a few tracks, I think, might be. I'll continue that and see if that does the job. But I'm probably going to keep working on that enormous playlist and use it for myself.
Yeah, it's really for you, Drew. Is what it comes down to. It's
Yeah,
your playlist. But what's gonna be funny is that one day you're gonna be sitting there and you're gonna be listening to something, and your daughter, your son, are gonna walk in and they're gonna be like, "Hey, that's so and so. I love this song," and you're gonna just have that dawning dad moment to be like, "Yeah, it
getting so
is.
big.
So proud." So,
So I've
Alan,
I've
are you?
definitely I've definitely caught myself playing other playlists that I thought, like it's just a bunch of good old music, not too worried about what'll be there, and then songs that I love that I may not have remembered were
Put in
on
the
the
list.
list, or I remembered part of but not all of it being on the list. And so we're out doing yard work, and I've got this thing cranked up. Like, I love Dylan. I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. Um, Desire is my favorite Dylan album. Trivia question. Yes, it is. His voice sounds better on that album than any other album he's ever sung on. Um, but Hurricane is a great song. It's also a song that has a lot of topics that need to be discussed, but I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, so when do we broach those subjects? Some language that I don't necessarily think I want to introduce to my kids just yet. But it's this fantastic song that is playing in the background, and I'm listening to and singing along to, and then thinking about what's going on in the story. And I know my son will catch on to narrative and thinking, he's 5. I mean, I can explain some of this probably. Okay, I need to be certainly careful how I'm introducing things and when, and be ready to have those conversations if they come up. If I want to show him a song, I need to be ready to have the whole conversation about it. So um, we may not play as much Marvin Gaye now as we will down the road, but we'll probably listen to plenty of Dylan. But a lot of those are protest songs, so that's getting into a cultural conversation of where we came from, and kind of curious to see um, how exposing them to more music is going to further those conversations.
Yeah, and that's gonna be very interesting. Alan, how are you doing with all of this? Like, how are you adapting with your musical interests with your
Oh
children?
man, well there's so much going on, and you guys are doing a great job with this conversation. I'm just sitting back and listening. Uh, I just think that listening to a wide variety of music helps. I'm not very good at that oftentimes. Like I will, you know, the Google Play Music that I listen to stream my music probably thinks that I've been in a coma since the mid to late 1990s, and like I just woke up out of this coma and I'm like, oh yes, I would like to listen to the refreshments. Thank you for asking. But it's a uh, just listen to some different types of music. I think is going to be the best case there, and take the time to not skip over that playlist that you might normally skip over. I think those are the good. Um, that's a good thing to do. Just listen to a lot of good music, and then when you are looking at a genre that you're not that familiar with, go ahead and talk to somebody that is, and have that conversation there. One thing that you did mention too, real quick though, is about some of the protest songs. Part of the reason that they are songs is because they are easier to ease into the subject, right? And they are, um, they're written as songs so that you can remember them and talk about them. And kids at 5 years old aren't going to understand everything. Kids at 35 years old aren't going to understand all of the complexities of it, especially when we are a generation removed. Um, but it is a great way to get into the topic before and to say, okay, hey, hang on a second. There's a lot more going on to the song than the melody and the words. When you start to listen to it, you start to understand there's a little bit more, and you can say, okay, now let's go back and actually find out about, how the hurricane was uh, most likely convicted on some very, very shady dealings. So,
True, true. And like I said again with Spotify, there's a lot of cool things. You can go to like an all 70s playlist and they have just like great songs from the 70s or great songs from the 80s or great songs from the 60s and they usually hit the nail on the head pretty good. I'm a big 80s kid. Like I will listen to 80s music all day long. A lot of that stuff makes no sense. Like I have no idea why these songs even exist, but they're
You
really
might as well jump.
catchy. Yeah, you might as well jump.
I think
So
so.
yeah, that sounds good. So, or take on me, sir. Take on me and take me on. Yeah, so there are different songs like that that like my kids will listen to. That Take on Me is like making a great comeback in memes right now. So my daughter's seeing it and she's like, "Oh, I know this song," and she's like jamming to it, and I'm jamming to it. I'm like, "Yeah, it's my song, man. This is great." And you've got this guy making goofy videos where he's dancing across the field and walking with this music, and it's hilarious and it's becoming relevant. And my daughter's like, "What? I know this song," and it's cool to see that stuff stick. But yeah, I agree with Alan on that one. Just expose them to absolutely as much as you possibly can, and kind of let them find their own genre. The radio is always very limited. I can't listen to the radio because it drives me nuts. I can only do repeat on so many times and listen to the top 40 songs every hour on the hour. I can't. I get tired. I need some diversity. So I try not to expose my kids to a bunch of that as well. So I have a playlist for my daughter for Spotify, so she can go on there and I can throw her music on her Spotify, and she can like, oh, Dad, you put this song in here. It's pretty cool. Or some of it's older stuff, some of it's newer stuff, some of it's songs that just came out within the last couple of weeks, and she's like, oh, this is great. And it's not all Taylor Swift and Rihanna. Like it's stuff that for some lesser known artists. So I'm hoping to not only expose her to older music, but a lot of new and upcoming music, so she can kind of see what's the transition and where we're going with music these days.
Yeah, I'm really most having the most trouble, I guess, finding the right starting point. So, you know, I may start with a song ears on the radio and be like, okay, so this style comes from this earlier style. This person has these influences, and kind of walk it back that direction, or do I start with Howlin' Wolf and some of the old blues guys and be like, okay, this is a style of music that is in the lineage of all of the stuff that you're listening to now. So as you move forward in time, like here's how blues impacts all of these other genres, and this is folk music. These are old, standards. Here's how these influence. So here's jazz. Here's how jazz trickles forward through time. Um, I'm not really sure where to start. That's why my playlist I think is so completely out of hand already.
Yeah, and I'm going from like 80s to 90s, so I have grunge on there, so I'm like having to explain Nirvana and Pearl Jam and hey, I don't know, hey, and my daughter's like, why does he sound like that? I'm like, because that was popular then, because that's how he sounded. He kind of just mumbled and that was the style, and it may not work nowadays, but I'm telling you, it was cool. That with flannel jackets, it was awesome. And then you have to explain some of this stuff to them. So it's fun because I think it's fun because it's like going down memory lane and going down these routes that you remember and that you
Yeah.
grew up with and exposing them to that. But also for you, you're like, oh man, I remember this song. It's a great song, or I remember where I was when that song. And I'm hoping that not only with the old music and the new music, but like our kids have that same thing years down the road and be like, I remember sitting on the couch with my dad listening to Spotify and listening to these songs, or listening to or listening to Drew and listening on this album or this vinyl, and be like, yeah, we would just sit there and we'd listen to that, and that would come on, and we were like eating pancakes at the table, and I was just jamming,
Yeah.
you know. So that I'm hoping this by exposing them to music because it's so cerebral. It sticks with you for such a long time that you're just building memories along with that.
Yeah, I know my musical upbringing was more in church, so I was singing at church, and my family played instruments, and we're all relatively musical. But the only real secular music I was ever exposed to, my dad had James Taylor's greatest hits, Blood on the Tracks, Slow Train Coming. I think we're at the end of his albums that were from people you've heard of. But I remember sitting and listening to all those three albums a lot, and so I knew that there was more out there. And you can't. I mean, the reason I'm thinking about it now is my son's going into kindergarten in August, and so I remember once I got into school, you start hearing more stuff. More people are singing stuff to themselves. There's songs on. You just get a broader, your world expands beyond the confines of your family and some of your friends to a broader and broader audience and more people. And so I know my world exploded when I heard, oh, who is this band? Who is this Paul McCartney you speak of? He must be some sort of a wizard. Um, that that experience is very clear in my head still. The first time I heard Kashmir blew my mind, and so there are those moments I know that are out there for my kids, but I want to be a part of shaping that because I remember growing up, my parents shaping that through the music that we had at home, and then finding the different trails that I would follow, finding a classic rock station and being like, who is this America? Like I need how does this fit into classic rock? Isn't this oldies? And then having to learn more about the people and what's going on. And now I have a giant stack of records in my house. So how do
Most
I send
definitely.
my son on the right track?
Yeah, so start 'em young. That's the pro tip. Because wait, just wait. Because my daughter's about to go into fifth grade, and my son is in preschool, and so they're exposed to music regularly. My son, he picks up on what my daughter listens to. So, but his certain songs stick with him. For instance, "Walk on the Moon," "Shut Up and Dance with Me" is his favorite song in the world. Like he will sit in the car and just, no matter what is on the radio, we'll be singing on top of it. "Shut up and dance with me. She took my arm," and he will just break into song. And I'm like looking in the back of the car. What are you? Okay, that's not on the radio, but we'll go with it. We'll work with it. But this song's really good, and he's just singing "Shut up and dance with," because he can, right? But then my daughter, so she's exposed to a lot more music than I am. So while I'm sitting there listening to my playlists and music that I'm used to, she will come home and she will have a song stuck in her head, and she will start singing it. And then I'm like listening, like trying to figure out what it is. She came home the other day and she was singing, "Woohoo! It's just me, myself, and I," and she just started breaking into this song, and I'm like, is that a song? Is that a real song? Is that a song that you're singing with your friends? Is that a song like you clap with? Like, is that a song that you, is that circle time? What, I don't know what this song is. Where did this song from? So she's like, "It's on the radio, Dad." Oh, I don't listen to the radio. Okay, so I'm turning on the radio. I'm like trying to hear this song when it comes on. Finally, I found what the song was. Cute song, very good, very catchy. I see why she got onto it. But like, she would do this every couple weeks and come with a different song that I have no clue what it is because I'm not paying attention to the same radio stations. And I'm like, okay, I need to find out what these. So I'm on Spotify, like I'm on Google, clicking like, hopefully she's got the lyrics right, because if the lyrics are wrong, I'm on this wild goose chase for this song that I'm never gonna find. And then I'm like, sounds like this, and just in going, it becomes this huge ordeal. But I'm just trying to stay. I don't want to say relevant, but like just try and stay aware of what she's listening to and see where her genre is going. She listens to a lot of Megan Trainor, which is fine. I'm good with that. I like Megan. She's a good. She's a good girl. Adele. She listens to a lot of Adele. Sings in the shower to Adele all day long. But like when these random songs come up, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know where that came from. I don't know who sings that. Is this an artist? Where did this come from? And then you just go down the rabbit hole and then try and find out who these people are. So prepare yourself, Drew and Alan. That is coming.
Oh, it's already there. My son came home the other day and asked if he could listen to Panda, and I'm like, I don't know, like Kung Fu Panda soundtrack? What are you talking about here? And apparently that's uh, that's a thing that's going on that this old man isn't aware of. So I had to get educated on that, and then let him borrow my phone to. I was showing him a video on my phone, and I got distracted, and I came back, and next thing I know, I'm looking at my Google Music history, and I'm like, oh, that's what Panda is. Okay, all right, he knows how to type. so,
So
so
you're saying that I'm focused on music education, but soon will be educated musically?
yes,
Yes, that's gonna happen.
That's
Just prepare yourself.
absolutely going to happen. But speaking of Google Music, the playlist that I've been liking a lot recently is called "Songs to Raise Your Kids To," and it is a mostly 60s and 70s kind of a thing. But I mean, it's let's see, "Baby Love" by the Supremes, "Stand by Me," "Up on the Roof," "Love the One You're With," "Here Comes the Sun," "Everybody's Talking," "Louie Louie," "California Dreamin'." I mean, it is a very eclectic, very a 60s song soundtrack, and so we've been listening to a lot of that, and it has raised some questions about, hey, what is this? Is this rock and roll music? And it's always a gray area in there if it's rock and roll or not. But my kids they both like Led Zeppelin because we listen to a lot of that, and they both like Led Zeppelin, and they know a couple of songs and they
Because
want
they
to hear
have
that.
ears. That's why they like Led Zeppelin.
Yes, exactly. But so they're fans of that. But whenever they hear another song, they're like, no, no, I want to hear rock and roll. Well, no, this is rock and roll. It's just a softer acoustic side of rock and roll, or it's rock and roll, but it's kind of getting into the um, kind of that ebb and flow and the different um, the different influences that that rock and roll was grown out of, right? So like this is a more blues inspired, right? So I mean Led Zeppelin comes very much from that blues background, right? Led Zeppelin 1 is extremely bluesy, and several covers of older blues songs. So um, lots of interesting things, and again, it's just another way that you can go in and kind of make a uh, you know, have that be an impetus for a conversation where you can go in and talk about, musical genres and kind of how they have blended and melded over the years.
I'm looking forward to the rest of the journey.
Yeah,
We all are.
yeah,
All right.
we
Well,
all
I
are.
guess on that note, I think we've covered just about all of it for tonight. I guess on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap it up and say thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see everybody next time.